Right, good evening. I want to be able to welcome you to another of our health and its preservation series with Dr. John Clark. And as we begin our series today, I would like to be able to invite you at this time to bow with me in a word of prayer, and then we'll begin. Excuse me. Our Father in heaven, we want to thank you, dear Lord, for another privilege and the opportunity we have to be able to come to study your word, to look at the historical events, plus to understand the nature of, of that which science shows us today as evidences. Help us so that we can be able to glean through that which we know is the truths that you have decided for us to be able to understand and recognize. And I pray that our eyes would be clear. And I pray especially for your servant, Dr. Clark, as he presents these truths, that you would enable our thoughts to, to understand the concepts that you would like for us to, and to understand that there are problems within our society today, problems of our own making, that we would learn to be able to right those wrongs. Once again, thanking you now for hearing our prayers and allowing our audio and visual equipment to work, that your name may be glorified through it all. Thank you for hearing his prayer before we have asked. In Jesus' name I pray. In the book Education, page 261, I read this morning where we are told, in the midst of this maddening rush, God is speaking. He bids us come apart and commune with him, not to pause for a moment in his presence, but in personal contact with Christ, to sit down in companionship with him. This is our need. So as we spend time studying these lessons of physical health, let's remember that the Lord desires for us to be in spiritual health as well. This time I'm going to give Dr. Clark his time now to be able to present to us about the most widely considered disease condition in the world, anemia. Go ahead, Dr. Clark. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Brother Bodetti. It's good to be with you again. And as you said, yeah, this is a very common problem, this anemia bit. And I've titled it Anemia, How to Have Good Blood, or Good Blood. I had a number of occasions to have people come to me that had really, really bad blood problems. People who had to have transfusions quite regularly. And initially I told them, well, you should go look up everything you can from our good sources on the phrase good blood. I'm not sure that they ever really took me seriously and did that. But as more and more people came to me and I had an opportunity to give them that same bit of advice, I thought, well, they're probably not going to do that much research, that much work to read through the writings and look up good blood, nor are they going to look through science with a similar object in mind. So I think I'll do it. And so I started in and compiled quite a interesting document with all these quotes on good blood and different variations on that, or perhaps poor blood as the opposite, and different variations on that. And I'll just kind of say here parenthetically, this is an honest to goodness presentation. Maybe I can say most of my other presentations are honest, but this one's honest to goodness because it's really mostly inspired work. And but let's just start off with a little physiology. Perfect health depends on perfect circulation. And here I have a bit of a diagram showing different blood vessels throughout the body and carrying the blood here and there. And first, the red blood vessels carry oxygenated blood from the lungs out to the body, and then the blue blood vessels are carrying deoxygenated blood through the veins to the heart, back to the lungs. And anything that disrupts that is going to cause trouble. The main or first thing that the blood has to do is carry oxygen to the tissues. When the tissues have good oxygen, they're happy. But anything that decreases that oxygen is going to cause problems. And that would be, the imperfect circulation. So the second thing that this blood is doing is distributing nutrients. If you don't have good blood, you're going to have poor oxygenation. That poor oxygenation might be at your heart, it might be at your brain, might be at your kidneys, might be at your toes. We check diabetics for their oxygen in their toes, especially when their toes aren't looking good. We call it the partial pressure of oxygen through the skin. And then there's temperature regulation. And this gets not only into the fact that blood is warm and helps to keep the body temperature fairly even throughout its entire circulation, but it also has to do with the fact that if you change the temperature of one part of the body, that part of the body will tend to shut down the blood flow in order to preserve the energy or the warmth of the blood for the rest of the body. And this can have an effect on your circulation, your blood, whether you have good blood or not. And then there's the whole thing about getting the blood to circulate well. And we as human beings are modest to cover ourselves up, but sometimes we use elastic bands to maintain the covering. And those elastic bands have a tendency to modify blood circulation. And then there's posture. People who stand up straight have good posture, their lungs work better, their heart works better, their circulation is better. You have poor posture, then you're going to have poor circulation, and this will affect things. And then there is the blood's condition of the blood. And we're going to probably spend most of our time on the condition of the blood here. And so I'll just, get into this and talk about this, because whether or not you have good blood is really whether or not you have good life. I mean, don't we read in the Bible that the life is in the blood? So if you have bad blood, don't you have bad life? Or poor blood, you have poor life? Or sick blood, you have sick life? Pretty much. And so let's just start off with the idea that you have laws of your being. Laws of your being. We have laws of nature. One of them is what goes up must come down. we call it gravity. But there's a lot of laws that are very important. You think of Daniel. He's an example of somebody who wanted to follow the laws of good health with his pulse to eat, water to drink. And here you got pictured things that might be considered pulse, like a lentil soup and flatbread. And so if we follow the laws, then we can be helped. God always honors the right as opposed to the wrong, right? The most promising youth of every land, subdued by the great conqueror, had been gathered at Babylon. Yet amid them, all the Hebrew captives were without a rival. The erect form, the firm elastic step, the fair countenance, showing that the blood was uncorrupted, the undimmed senses, the untainted breath, all were so many certificates of good habits, insignia of the nobility with which nature honors those who render obedience to her laws. And so Daniel honored the laws. He rendered obedience, and God honored him with good health. And it included his blood, uncorrupted. And so we want uncorrupted blood. So if we're going to have good blood, as in not anemia, we're going to have to follow some good health laws. So let's go through some of these. And one of those is regularity of mealtime. By regularity, what do we mean? Well, better 5 minutes early than 5 minutes late on your meal timing. If you can keep your meal timing good, then you're more likely to have good blood. Reading here, I should eat regularly of the most healthful food. Regularity meaning on schedule, which will make the best quality of blood. And I should not work intemperately if it is in my power to avoid doing so. And when I violate the laws God has established in my being, I am to repent and reform and place myself in the most favorable condition under the doctrines God has provided. What are the doctrines God has provided? Pure air, pure water, and the healing, precious sunlight. So regularity of meals. When was the last time you had somebody come up to you and tell you that they were low on blood and you said, what times do you eat? Some people eat whenever they feel like it. Some people eat when it just happens to fall to their opportunity. But other people who have risen above the level of just brute animals pick a time, put it on a schedule, stick to it like clockwork. And so this is very important to having good blood. Schedule. What happens if I'm off schedule? When I go off schedule, all kinds of bad things happen. When I go off schedule, here's what happens. My circadian rhythms get messed up. My chronobiology goes haywire. I end up with mismatches in the clocks that run my melatonin versus my cortisol. The end result is an increase in inflammation, an increase in risk of autoimmune disease, and most autoimmune diseases suffer with poor quality of blood, anemia. And so I need to be very regular with my meal times. And so strict eating schedule. Irregularities in eating destroy the healthful tone of the digestive organs. We're talking stomach, intestines, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, to the detriment of health and cheerfulness. So you won't be very happy if this happens to you. The food cannot be converted into good blood. So if you're always all over the map with when you eat, you won't have good blood. If all would eat at regular periods, not tasting anything between meals. So, okay, now we're really getting specific. How much time should be between meals where no food is eaten? 5 hours. Is that between the beginnings of each successive meals? No, that's between the end of the previous meal and the beginning of the next. 5 hours. And so the regular periods should be 5 hours apart, and there should be no eating between meals, no snacking. I mean, if you want good blood, I mean, it's your choice. If all would eat at regular periods, not tasting anything between meals, they would be ready for their meals. This is key. What does it mean by ready? Well, the digestive juices come out. The stomach gets blood to it, extra blood. The insulin goes up so that you can be prepared for sugar going in the bloodstream. They would be ready for meals and would find a pleasure in eating, because your digestion is so much better, that would repay them for their effort. Wow. So many people have irregularities in eating. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite an interesting thing. All right, so we've talked about schedule. We've started with schedule. You're thinking, wow, you mean we started off anemia talk with schedule? Had you ever thought we would do that? And here we are talking, you know, we're reading the real counsels right from, yeah. Okay, pure air. And what about pure air as opposed to impure air? Well, how do you know if you have impure air? Set out a few mold test kits in your house. That'll tell if you have impure air. Check and see if your windows are ever open. That'll tell you. You sleep at night with your window closed, there's no pure air in that room. I always wonder about hotel rooms. You walk in there, the window won't open, the air conditioner doesn't bring any outside air. I wonder when the last time any air got in the room is. I wonder if you're going to suffocate in that room. Yeah. Well, reading here, a multitude of women are nervous and careworn because they deprive themselves of the pure air that would make pure blood. So what makes pure blood? Pure air. So what do you think happens if you breathe impure air? Well, impure blood. And if your blood's impure, what's going to happen? You're going to have trouble, trouble with your blood, anemia and other things. So, okay, reading on, pure air that would make pure blood, and of the freedom of motion that would send the blood bounding through the veins and giving life, health, and energy. Did you know you need the blood bounding through your veins to have, health, energy, life? Well, there it is. Many women have become confirmed invalids when they might have enjoyed health, and many have died of consumption and other diseases when they might have lived their allotted term of life had they dressed in accordance with health principles and exercised freely in the open air. So what do we do in the open air? We exercise. And we want to keep our windows open at night when we're in our sleeping room. The open window brings in the fresh air. In the cool of the evening, it may be necessary to guard against chilliness by extra clothing. But there should be a free circulation of pure air through the room during sleeping hours. The free air of heaven by day and night is one of the richest blessings we can enjoy. Fresh air will purify the blood. There it is. Refresh the body and help to make it strong and healthy. The invigoration produced will be reflected upon the mind. You need a vigorous mind with good, vigorous blood going through it. Fresh air in the open air at night. Impart to it tone and clearness as well as a degree of composure and serenity. Living in close, ill-ventilated rooms weakens the system, makes the mind gloomy, and the skin sallow, and the circulation feeble. The blood moves sluggishly, digestion is retarded, and the system is rendered particularly sensitive to cold. Wait a minute, I thought I was keeping the window closed because it was cold. Well, that's not necessarily the way to fight cold. Put on more clothing and open the window, get fresh air, invigorate your system so you can fight cold. Yeah, very interesting. Wow. Some people have the windows open at night, some people don't. When they have the windows closed, they rebreathe the same carbon dioxide. When they rebreathe the same carbon dioxide, it increases in the room. They wake up feeling drugged. They wake up feeling unrested. They wake up feeling like they didn't sleep. Well, it's because they didn't have fresh air. What happens if you and your partner are in a bedroom and the window's closed and there's no fresh air? Well, you breathe the air and then they breathe the air, and then you breathe the air and then they breathe the air, and then you breathe it. How good is that? Because when they breathe the air, they're putting off toxins, and then you breathe it, you suck up those toxins, then you put off more toxins. Ridiculous, right? Yeah, but it'd be good to sleep outdoors. Exercise in the open air and breathing deep breathing. This is part of having good blood. Learning to breathe correctly, breathing well. You have not had a liberal supply of air. Anybody ever tell you that? Brother I, which is short for his name, capital I, has labored in his store, closely applying himself to his business and allowing himself but a limited amount of air and exercise. He breathes only from the top of his lungs. It is seldom that he exercises the abdominal muscles in the act of breathing. Stomach, liver, lungs, and brain are suffering for the want of deep, full inspiration of air, which would electrify the blood. Your blood feel sluggish? Does your blood feel cold? Does your blood feel... You want to electrify your blood? Practice breathing. Electrify your blood and impart to it a bright, lively color, and which alone can keep it pure and give tone and vigor to every part of the living machinery. You need to be out in the fresh air. Otherwise, your blood is going to stagnate. Your blood's not going to be bright red. your blood is going to get what we call blood stasis inflammatory syndrome. A good circulation purifies the blood and secures health, while a poor circulation renders blood impure and induces congestion of the vital organs. They took a bunch of young men, they put them in a hospital bed for 2 weeks to see what would happen. They checked their blood every day. In 2 weeks, their C-reactive protein, a marker for high inflammation, went up. Other things went wrong. They started getting lots and lots of interleukin-1, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor, different inflammatory mediators. They would have gotten sick if they just stayed in bed any longer. They got them out of bed. That was the end of the experiment. You can't just sit around and have good blood. It's going to get bad. You're made for activity. You see, if you keep wiggling, they won't put you in a box. Okay, the healing precious sunlight. So we've talked about regularity and schedule. We've now talked about fresh air. Now we got to get on with good sunlight. Is sun really important for my blood? Absolutely. Sun is so important. And we hide from the sun. We go to bed in the dark. We get up in the dark. We drive to work just as the sun's coming up. We go into the warehouse to work or whatever indoor work. After 8 hours of indoor work, we get in our cars and go home. We go home and make our meals and we eat indoors and we never get outdoors and we don't get any sunlight. We wonder why we're anemic. Well, the building is so placed that it will get all the sunlight possible. Talking about a good sanitarium, not only in the sleeping rooms, but in the rooms where the patients sit. The sun is God's doctor, which brings health and strength, purifying and giving color to the blood. And we must have it. So there you go. You want your blood to be nice and bright, healthy? You need sunlight. How does sunlight help? Well, you might be thinking it's the vitamin D, and certainly we don't want to dismiss vitamin D. It certainly got a lot of publicity in studies, especially since they figured out they could make some synthetically or extract it from animals and put it in human beings and find some improvement in some health indices. But that's not it. It's the infrared, not just the ultraviolet. It's the infrared, which makes up over half of the spectrum, half of the energy of the spectrum. And the infrared gives you a boost of melatonin in all the mitochondria of all the cells in your body. And so that's what's really helpful, purifying and giving color to the blood. And so we want to have good blood. We need some sunlight. Now, what is the blood made up of? Number one ingredient, water, about 70%. Well, what happens if I don't drink enough water? Well, you think you can have good blood if you don't drink enough water? No, you're missing an ingredient. You need a full measure of that ingredient, pure water, to drink and fresh air to breathe, invigorate the vital organs, purify the blood, and help nature in her task of overcoming the bad conditions of the system. How much water should you drink? Scientifically, we know that men need about 3.7 liters and women 2.7 liters. Putting that in quarts, it's about a gallon for men and about 3 quarts for women. And that's just maintenance. And that includes some water you get in your food, which, not really supposed to be a lot of water in your food, but that part of your water comes from your food. So you need lots of good water to drink. Yep, there you go. Okay. Now let's talk about temperance. Overwork is not helpful. Temperance and work. What's temperance and work? Well, not overworking. Not wearing yourself out. How do you know if you're wearing yourself out? Do you recuperate from the day's work by the next day or not? If you don't, you're sort of in trouble. Do you feel rested after sleep? Are you ready for the next day? So reading here, you work too hard. You work too many hours. And your blood-making organs are not in a healthy condition to make good blood. What caused that? Overwork. When was the last time your doctor, when you came in and found out your hemoglobin was 9, said, you must be overworking? Probably didn't happen, right? Okay, but we've been hitting on the big ones here. We're talking how to have good blood. And so if you don't have good blood, you want to be listening to this very carefully because we're going to give you all the tips on how to have good blood. So yeah, we've been talking about regularity of schedule, fresh air, sunlight. We've been talking about pure water. Now we're talking about temperance in work. We'll get into temperance and other things soon. How about temperance in sanitation? Oh, you don't want to live near a sewer where you can smell the sewer. You don't want to live near a compost heap where you can smell the compost. You want to keep the dust mites out of your house by cleaning all the corners in your house. I'm just telling you here, I got a picture there of somebody's compost pile. It's a bit of a hard picture to sort out what's in there, but anyway. So if every family realized the beneficial results of thorough cleanliness, they would make a special effort to remove every impurity from their persons and from their houses and would extend their efforts to their premises. Your environment needs to be pure. And that's a challenge. We live where there's a lot of leaves. We spent the early part of the fall picking up a lot of leaves. Many suffer decayed vegetable matter to remain about their premises. They are not awake to the influence of these things. There is constantly arising from these decaying substances an effluvium that is poisoning the air. By inhaling the impure air, the blood is poisoned, the lungs become affected, and the whole system is diseased. Disease of almost every description will be the cause of inhaling the atmosphere affected by these decaying substances. Hopefully you're not eating those decayed substances. Oh, who would eat decayed substances? How about vinegar? That's just decayed stuff. One time I threw a bunch of, we were canning peaches and threw the excess stuff in a garbage can, put it outside in the warm weather. Next day I came around, I smelled vinegar in that thing. Boy, I should have marketed it. Dr. Clark's organic, unfiltered apple cider vinegar or peach vinegar or whatever. Yeah, I can get rid of my rotten stuff too, just like the Bragg's company gets rid of their rotten apples. No, we don't do that to people. That's immoral. We don't do that to people. We don't give them our rotten stuff because it'll give them bad blood. If you have bad blood, then you won't have good health. And if you have poor health, you'll be coming to see me for other things. But when was the last time your doctor, when you said you had anemia or his lab test showed you had anemia, said, well, can we inspect your house? Can we look for dust in the corners? Can we look for compost heaps around the house or in your neighbor's houses? Or can we check to make sure there's no sewer smells in your town? But it affects your blood. Probably doesn't even come out in scientific studies because they don't have any thought of, going out and checking everybody's house that they're studying to see what's in their house. When was the last time you saw a scientific study and they said, we went and checked everybody's houses to make sure their dwellings were exactly the same? No, they don't do that. It's a confounder, and nobody chases down that confounder, so the science is all bad. All right, we got to talk about clothing now. I sort of touched on it early in that slide with that vascular system showing that you didn't want to have cold extremities because cold, the body sort of conserves the blood energy and blood warmth by not letting it go to a cold extremity. So you need warm clothing. Notice we have two people here with long clothing on. The gentleman has pants and shirt. Looks like he has suspenders. That's good too. The woman has the long sleeves, long dress. And so the extremities are chilled in some people. And the heart has thrown upon it double labor in forcing the blood into these chilled extremities. And when the blood has performed its circuit through the body and returned to the heart, it is not the same vigorous warm current that left it. It has been chilled in its passage through the limbs. The heart, weakened by too much labor and poor circulation of poor blood, is then compelled to still greater exertion in order to throw the blood to the extremities, which are never as healthfully warm as other parts of the body. The heart fails in its efforts, and the limbs become habitually cold, and the blood which is chilled away from the extremities is thrown back upon the lungs and brain, and inflammation and congestion of the lungs or of the brain is the result. Wow. Oh boy, all kinds of problems from just wearing bad clothing. What would bad clothing be? Oh, short pants, short sleeve shirts. Yeah. So, wow, we got some work to do here, huh? We got some work to do here to get people healthy. I mean, there's a lot of work here with when was the last time you came to the doctor and you had anemia and he said, took your hand in his and started pointing to your arm and says, "Where's your clothing on your arm? Why are you wearing short sleeves? You don't wear long sleeves, you're going to have anemia." And here we're showing you have anemia. Anybody ever tell you that? Well, I'm telling you. Well, the inspiration is telling you here too, right? Yeah. All right, we're talking anemia. We're talking what to do to fix anemia. And we're now going to look at what clothing does to your lungs and affects your blood. You see, your lungs get all the blood from your body. And here we have pictured what? A bra. Confinement indoors, shut away from the vigorous sunshine and deprived of the invigorating air of heaven, improper eating, with wrong habits of dressing, corrupt the blood of women. We've kind of covered that already. In order for the lungs to do the work God designed, they must be left free without the slightest compression. If the lungs are cramped, they cannot develop, but their capacity will be diminished, making it impossible to make a sufficient inspiration of air. The abdominal muscles were designed to aid the lungs in their action. Where there is no compression of the lungs, the motion is full breathing will be observed to be mostly of the abdomen. When lacing prevents this, the breathing is restricted to the upper portion of the lungs. Women's dress should be arranged so loosely upon their persons about the waist that she can breathe without the least obstruction. Her arms should be left perfectly free, that she may raise them above her head with ease. And so women who wear bras have more breast cancer. Women who wear bras don't take as deep a breath with every breath of air. Women who have bras are going to end up with more blood problems, more anemia. And women are more likely to have anemia due to losses through menstruation as well. And so we're really touching on some big issues here. There's a whole book, Dressed to Kill, talks about the dangers of the bra and its impact on women's health. It's not a health item. I should do a whole lecture on that. It has a lot to do with sexual attractiveness, but that's a whole nother topic. All right, let's get on with food now. We've been talking about everything but food, haven't we? You might have thought I would have started out with food, but let's talk about other things. Let's talk about grains. You see, grains have nutrients, especially minerals that are important. Simple whole grains, unrefined grains are the ones we're talking about here. The simple grains, fruit of the trees, and vegetables have all the nutritive properties necessary to make good blood. But I thought I should take a supplement. No, you just need to eat good food, pray over it, and expect the Lord to give you good blood. So we mentioned grains, fruits, especially from trees, and vegetables. We'll get back to these. We'll get into these more. First, I want to touch on salt. There's a lot of discussion on salt. You need good salt. You need a little bit of good salt, not a lot of good salt. And so we're told, do not eat largely salt. Avoid the use of pickles and spices. Eat an abundance of fruit, and the irritation that calls for so much drink at mealtime will be largely disappeared. But you need some salt. I use some salt and always have, because salt, instead of being deleterious, is actually essential for the blood. You need a little salt. There's sodium and chloride in your blood. You don't get enough sodium and chloride, your sodium goes down, your brain starts suffering. That's not a good thing. So I just threw that in there about salt. Let's get on with fruits now. And so we'll talk here about fruits. Fruits of the trees. And here's that same quote. They're necessary to making good blood. Fruit and vegetables taken at one meal will produce acidity of the stomach when impurity of the blood results. Then impurity of the blood results, and the mind is not clear because the digestion is imperfect. So you don't want fruits and vegetables at the same meal if you want to have good blood. You want to have fruits and vegetables at different meals. So, for example, if I go to a potluck, first thing I do is I look up and down the table. And I look up and down the table and I think, okay, which am I going to do better at in this meal with? Am I going to do better with fruits or vegetables? Fruits or vegetables? Okay, maybe I spot enough fruit dishes that I think, okay, fruits look like the go today. And so I pick 2, 3, or 4 at most, usually 3 dishes that are compatible with fruit, and I eat those only. Well, if that's going to be a vegetable meal, then I pick vegetables. What's a fruit? It has a seed. That's usually the product of the flower. What's a vegetable? Well, it's a root, like a carrot. It's a stem, like a celery. It's a leaf, like a spinach. It's a flower, like a cauliflower. Roots, stems, leaves, flowers. And you don't want to mix those two because it'll give you bad blood. Mixtures, compatible mixtures is what you want, not incompatible mixtures. And so keep that in mind. Good blood, eat fruits at one meal and vegetables at another. Now let's talk about nuts. Here we have pictured some pecans or pecans, depending on what part of the world you're from. And grains, fruits, and nuts and vegetables contain all the nutritive properties necessary to make good blood. So nuts are important. What's in nuts? Well, fat-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are what are good. And so we want to eat good food that will make good blood, and nuts can be a part of that. But there's an awful lot of fat in nuts, aren't there? Yeah, isn't there? Yeah, but it's good fats, and it's there with all its natural fiber and phytochemicals, enzymes, and other nutrients, and so it's a good thing. Okay, so now let's talk about vegetables. Vegetables have all the nutritive properties necessary to make good blood. We already read that. And so we want to look for vegetables that are in good shape, vegetables that are free from sprays, vegetables that have all the different colors if it's possible. It's good to have vegetables that are maybe sprouts, and then is in the first exhibit there. Vegetables that are leaves, vegetables that are, oh, they've got onions, scallions, and there's all kind, and some of the best vegetables for making good blood are beets, a lot of minerals there. Onions and garlics helps your blood flow better. Green leafy vegetables make for strong blood and purify it. There's a lot of good vegetables for blood that you don't want to be without. And so if you're only eating, donuts, you're going to be in trouble. Yeah. Now, scanty, ill-cooked food is not going to help you. Scanty, ill-cooked food depraves the blood by weakening the blood-making organs. I was taking a history on one family. I said, okay, what do you eat for breakfast? Well, I eat ramen noodles. It's like, is that what you eat every day for breakfast? Yeah. I'm like, man, that's Chinese junk food. That's like worse than white bread with all kinds of MSG. I mean, and yeah, bad stuff. And that's scanty, ill-cooked food. Here you have a guy eating, white bread and probably begging for food. So you need a variety and a sufficient supply of good food. And if you have a good variety and a sufficient supply, then you're good. All right. Your food needs to look good too, appetizing. Because when your food looks appetizing, it is appetizing. And when you have a good appetite, it helps you to eat well. But more important still is the art of preparing food so that it is both healthful and appetizing. And appetizing is not only how it looks, but how it tastes. Good tasting food is good. Sometimes we have perverted appetites. We'll get into that here shortly. That make us think that the bad food is good because it has a strong flavor that appeals to our, sensual nature. But food should taste good. It should receive more attention, for in order to make good blood, the system requires good food. And so make your food taste good. So there we have some whole wheat pancakes, but they've decorated it up with nuts and berries and that kind of thing. So it looks nice, looks inviting, and it is inviting. It is good food. And so make it good. Now, yeah, some people have perverted appetites. Here's a lady eating what? Fruit Loops. And so a trained health conscious appetite can be trusted to appreciate that which should we assimilate and convert into good blood. But a perverted appetite will not call for the food required by the system. You can't just go by what you feel like eating. I mean, it's good to have an appetite, but if all you have an appetite for is Fruit Loops, you're in trouble. And let me tell you, these foods will have an appeal to you that is like dangerous. They don't make rat poison taste awful. They make it taste good so the rats will eat it. Same is true of the fast food joints or the junk food joints. Here we got cereal. When they do studies on rats with this kind of cereal, the biggest problem the researchers have is keeping enough rats alive to the end of the study to prove something. It kills the rats. Box cereals kill rats. Keep that in mind next time you have rats you want to get rid of, right? Well, add a little salt and it'll kill them faster. Okay, anyway. Now, condiments and spices corrupt the blood. Here we have your favorites. Mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, tomato sauce. Food prepared with condiments and spices inflames the stomach and corrupts the blood and paves the way to stronger stimulants. It induces nervous debility, impatience, and lack of self-control. Tobacco and the wine cup follow. Wow. So these must be gateway drugs. They are. The salads are prepared with oil and vinegar, like salad dressings, right? Fermentation takes place in the stomach, and the food does not digest, but decays or putrefies. What's putrefies? That's what animals do that are roadkill along the road. They swell up, they stink. Yeah. As a consequence, the blood is not nourished, but becomes filled with impurities, and liver and kidney difficulties appear. What did I say caused anemia? Vinegar. Where do I find vinegar? Try finding me a loaf of bread in your favorite supermarket that doesn't have vinegar in the ingredients. Try to find a salad dressing or vegenaise or any of these things that doesn't have vinegar in the ingredients. Try to find, they put vinegar in all kinds of things. Baked beans, breads, condiments, salad dressings. They sell it as a health tonic. People get suckered into it, bamboozled into it, brainwashed into it. And these things also have MSG, as in like natural flavors, and MSG doesn't help. Fermented and adulterated ingredients is what we're talking about here. And this is not good. It's not what you want. And they have excessive fat. When they have excessive fat, it reduces the amount of oxygen your blood carries dramatically. And so you want to be aware of this. All right, now pickles, minced pies, spices. Diseased flesh meats are not helpful. The blood-making organs cannot convert spices, mince pies, pickles, diseased flesh meat into good blood. Stimulating, irritating food does not make the best blood. But I just want to back up here to this first one. The blood-making organs cannot convert spices. What kind of spices? Fiery spices. There's a lot of dangerous spices. I had a lady who did her master's degree in public health do a research project on the effect of putting spices in foods. She discovered that a vast majority of spices are not nice and clean and pure. They have bacteria in them. When you stick it in the food toward the end of the cooking process, the bacteria live, and the bacteria make you sick. Think that makes good blood? No. Minced pies and pickles. Well, what about pickles? People love their pickles, but they're made with vinegar most of the time. Yeah. And how about diseased flesh meats? How do you know? When was the last time you saw, killed your own cow to get your meat or your chicken? Most people just depend on some big industry to give them their meat. We went and visited a chicken a raising ranch. It had a building about 75 feet wide and maybe 500 feet long, and chickens beak to beak in there, poop all over the floor. The birds never got any fresh air. They never got any sunlight. You think they're healthy? And people go to the fast food restaurant and get their whatever chicken nuggets and or fried chicken or whatever. They have no idea if the meat is diseased. When I was a kid, we were I was going to school next door to a slaughter operation, and there was a cow out there in the pasture with a cancerous eye hanging out of its head. Yeah, it went to slaughter too. You just cut out that eyeball, cut off the head, throw it away, feed people the meat that's filled with all those diseases. When was the last time you required a death certificate on the animal that you're going to eat? When was the last time you wanted to see its medical records? When's the last time you even saw it before it got killed? And you wonder why you have anemia. Yeah, that's a problem. So just the meat alone, isn't going to make you good blood. And here we're talking, you don't even know the quality of the meat you're eating. Expensive food preparations like at the restaurant. Guess what? Those restaurants don't have as a part of their agenda in their food preparation plan to make you healthy. They want to make you poor as they open your wallets and take money out of your pocket for this expensive food preparation. Be content to take the products of the soil, the fruits and grains and vegetables, and prepare them in a healthful way. Does that sound simple? Yes. Do you think you do that at the restaurant? No. We need not the most expensive food preparations that men can provide. Be satisfied with the simple preparations that give just as good blood. Let me reread that. Be satisfied with the simple preparations that give just as good blood, just as good physical strength. And so I just want to delve into this a little more. What are food preparations? Today we call it processed foods. There was a film made, a documentary called Processed People. Sort of kind of a spin on the fact that people are eating all this processed food. So therefore they're processed people. And you don't want all this processed food because it's not nutritious. It's literally dangerous. And so, but everything I eat is processed. How do you define if something's not processed? You go to the fresh fruit and vegetable section of your store. So when was the last time you came to the doctor and he found out you had anemia and he asked, how much time do you spend or how much food do you buy from the fresh fruit and vegetable section of your store? Or how much processed food do you eat? Well, if you're going to be a good doctor and treat anemia, you better be asking all the questions that I've given so far in this presentation. Ask them if they eat pickles. Ask them if they eat mayonnaise. Ask them if they eat salad dressing. Ask them if they eat boxed cereals. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. And, well, okay. Let's keep going here. Must replace discarded food items with wholesome food items. Don't just eliminate bad foods from your diet. Add good foods. What would be the best foods? Fresh fruits and vegetables. What would be the next good foods? Whole grains, nuts and seeds, that kind of thing. All right. So do not adopt merely a meat avoidant diet. What happens if you adopt merely a meat avoidant diet? You tend to become a grainitarian. And I'm not saying there's something really bad about grains, but it's not a balanced diet to eat mostly grains and no fresh fruits and vegetables. You're supposed to be a vegetarian. That means you eat vegetables. You're going to become a grainitarian, you eat grains. Well, all right. Do not adopt merely a meat avoidant diet. With many persons, the reform consists merely in discarding certain unwholesome foods. Some are unable to obtain the most desirable foods, and instead of using such things as would best supply the lack, they adopt an impoverished diet. Their food does not supply the elements needed to make good blood. Do donuts make good blood? No. And so you must replace discarded food items with wholesome food items. That's the plan. Now, maybe my blood's low because I'm not eating enough food. Well, you got to know how much food to eat. And if you eat too much food, it will not help. You indulge your appetite by eating more food than your system can convert into good blood. There it is. Oh, that's pretty straightforward. Eat too much, it won't make good blood. When was the last time? I keep asking this. When was the last time your doctor who diagnosed you with anemia asked if you overeat? Well, here we are. We're hitting the big ones here. And this is, I said this is my honest to goodness lecture because it's full of inspiration, not just science. But it's better in science, and we're giving the science here as we go along too. But overeating, even of the simplest food, benumbs the sensitive nerves of the brain and weakens its vitality. All of that is taken into the stomach above what the system can convert into good blood, clogs the machinery, for it cannot be made into either flesh or blood, and its presence burdens the liver and produces a morbid condition in the system. Whoa! Okay. Bottom line, don't overeat. Taking more food into the system than it can convert into good blood causes a depraved quality of blood and taxes the vitality to a much greater degree than labor or physical exercise. Whoa. Here's another one. She eats nearly double the amount which she ought to eat. That means we could eat about half what we usually do. All that she takes into her stomach above that which her system can convert into good blood becomes waste matter. To burden nature in the disposal of it, her system is clogged with a mass of matter which hinders her in her work, clogs the machinery, and weakens the life forces. Whoa! So when you overeat, you do get more fat cells maybe, or bigger fat cells. You gain weight, but you're not gaining blood. You're actually getting less blood. And, I mean, this is huge. I mean, just think of the implications here. Yeah. Yeah. All right, complex combinations are counterproductive. We've already talked about mixing fruits and vegetables. But we need to study the art of preparing in a simple manner fruits, grains, and vegetables. We do not need these complex combinations that are provided. We should put into our stomach only those things which will make good blood. We want to make sure the combinations are right. Some of this takes personal research into what affects you, like keep a diary of what you eat and see how you feel. Some of this is common sense. What's common sense? I don't know. Okay. Well, but some of it has to do with figuring out what things aren't compatible. Very greasy things probably don't go well with very watery things. We've already mentioned fruits and vegetables don't go good together. There's other reasons why fruits and vegetables don't go good together. It has to do with the digestion that's different between the two. Fruit tends to digest quickly and vegetables take longer. If the fruit is digested while the vegetables are still digesting, the fruit will rot while the digestion continues on the vegetables. That's not good. There's different probiotic bacteria that come in with the fruit versus the vegetables. Might have a war on your hand between the different probiotic bacteria. Anyway. Now, prepared meals are counterproductive. When you go to the restaurant and they made you the food, you don't know what they stick in there. Oh, I could tell stories that, all right, I won't. But fast food, fast death, I put here, yeah, it's scary because their plan is not to make you healthy, but to make you poor financially as they get rich. Now let's talk about chewing your food, because you got to chew that food if you're going to get nutrients out of it. We had a dog. We had a dog that was a big dog. And somehow we ended up with a bunch of peanuts that weren't that great. I think they got moldy, or at least they were excess. So we fed the dog a whole bunch of peanuts. He ate a whole bunch of peanuts. He pooped a whole bunch of peanuts, unchewed. Think he got any nutrients out of that? No. You think that made good blood for him? No. So you have to chew your food well if you want the nutrients out of it. The transformation of food into good blood is a wonderful process, and all human beings should be intelligent upon the subject. Woohoo! You're here. You're getting intelligent on the subject. I'm here to make you intelligent on the subject, and we're working on it. Okay, keep listening. In order that the digestive fluids may be called into action and the saliva become mixed with the food, the teeth must do their work carefully and thoroughly. That's the only way you're going to get the nutrients out of the food. You got to chew it. Voila. Okay. And by the way, dry food makes better blood than wet food. I mean, we're talking dispensed with the smoothies, the juices, the porridges, the soups, the liquid foods. Yeah. Because taken in a liquid state, your food would not give healthful vigor or tone to the system. Dry food is better than so much wet food. Eat what the system requires to produce good blood. And so, when was the last time your doctor that diagnosed your anemia told you you shouldn't be doing smoothies, juices, soups, porridges, or all this liquid food? And here we're giving you insights into how to have the very best blood of anybody on the planet. We've covered an awful lot of topics here, haven't we? Yeah, but you're the one with the need to have good blood. And so this is the information to help you have good blood. And they told you should be taking iron pills or B12 shots or, well, I mean, did they do that after they asked if you had a compost heap in your backyard that was stinking up your backyard? Probably not. All right, good blood and bad. The good and bad of bread, sorry. The good and bad of bread. Why did I say good and bad? Remember I said when you become a vegetarian, you don't want to become a grainitarian? And a lot of these breads are raised with yeast, okay? Unleavened flatbread requires thorough mastication, which is a benefit both to the teeth and the stomach. They make good blood and impart strength. With such bread and the abundant fruits, vegetables, and grains with which our country abounds, no greater luxury should be desired. That which we eat cannot be converted into good blood unless it is of the proper quality, simple, and nutritious. The stomach can never convert sour bread into sweet. Food poorly prepared is not nutritious and cannot make good blood. Did you pick that up? Did you get that? Unleavened breads make good blood. Sourdough breads make bad blood. Did you get that? Poor blood. Yeah. So what you raise your blood with, what you raise your bread with, I'll get it right here before we get off of this slide. Bread and blood sounds too close together, right? All right. You want good blood. You get it from good bread. Good bread is unleavened bread, or bread that isn't full of sourness like sourdough bread. So I have a whole talk on sourdough bread. I have a whole article on sourdough bread on my website. Sourdough bread is not good. It is not going to give you good blood. Now, there's one person that was not having good blood, and the recommendation was given to use some eggs in grape juice. You must not deprive yourself of that class of food which makes good blood. Get eggs of healthy fowl. When was the last time you saw a healthy fowl? I mean, a healthy chicken. Use these eggs cooked or raw. Drop them uncooked into the best unfermented wine or grape juice, as we're saying here, you can find. And that will help you get good blood. Amazing. Yeah. Well, it's not as a daily thing, but as a medicine until you get your blood picked up and you get on a good diet and follow all the principles that we've given in this lecture so far. Now, fermented foods. And I've sort of picked on Bragg's organic apple cider vinegar a bit here. And some people say, well, you know, why don't you listen to all the data on how good this apple cider vinegar is? And I say, why don't you be more natural and just eat rotten apples? I mean, who needs to have somebody process it? Why not avoid the processed food and just stick your teeth into that moldy, brown, sagging bag of what? Well, let me read the quote here. More die by eating decayed fruit and decayed vegetables which ferment in the stomach and result in blood poisoning than we have any idea of. Whoa. And how do most people eat their rotten fruit? Bragg's Bragg's apple cider vinegar or any kind of vinegar, white vinegar, brown vinegar, balsamic vinegar, vinegar with their Thousand Island dressing, vinegar with their Italian dressing, vinegar with their olive oil dressing. Yeah. Well, yeah. Nicely prepared vegetables and fruit in their season will be beneficial if they are of the best quality, not showing the slightest sign of decay, but are sound and unaffected by any disease or decay. Yep, that's the beginning of the same quote. So we don't want any kind of decayed vegetables or fruits. How else do people eat decayed vegetables or fruits? How about miso or tempeh, rotten soy stuff, or soy sauce? That's more rotten soy stuff. It's fermented, it's decayed. How about brown rice syrup, malted barley? Try finding bread without barley malt in it. That's in a lot of these things. And then there is yogurt, and there's sour cream, and there is, cheese. All these things are rotten, fermented, aged. This is not going to help you have good blood. It's diseased or decayed. You mean vegetables can get a disease? Yeah. You mean milk can get a disease? Yeah. And cows can get a disease. Well, how do cows get a disease? Well, the food that you eat from them, salami, hot dogs, some of these are fermented products. Now let's talk about we said we'd get back to temperance, and here we are. Tea, coffee, tobacco, liquor, they don't make good blood. Hope you didn't think they made good blood. Drunks don't have good blood, and they definitely end up with anemia. And wine corrupts blood. But they told me to drink wine for my stomach's sake. They told me to. That isn't wine that's fermented. They told me to drink wine for my heart. Yeah, but they didn't tell you that it's going to corrupt your blood, did you? Did they? Luxurious living and the use of wine corrupt the blood, inflame the passions, and produce disease of every kind. But the evil does not end here. Parents leave maladies as a legacy to their children. As a rule, every intemperate man who rears children transmits his inclinations and evil tendencies to his offspring. He gives them disease from his own inflamed and corrupted blood. Well, have you read that these sins go from the each generation to the third and fourth generation. And now we're saying he gives them disease from his own corrupt blood. Whoa. So does anemia run in families? So let's get back to tobacco here. Many chew and smoke until the blood is corrupted and the nervous system undermined. The words of the Apostle Paul are applicable to them. Having therefore these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, fully acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. That is our call to eat good food, to have good blood. Tobacco won't help. Now, I mentioned meat a few times. Let's just hit it squarely here. Flesh meat is not going to be helpful. Flesh meat will depreciate the blood. Cooked meat with spices. Cook meat with spices and eat it with rich cakes and pies, and you'll have a bad quality of blood. You need bad blood? There's a solution. The mince pies, that's sort of a meat pie, and the pickles, which should never find a place in any human stomach, will give a miserable quality of blood. Oh, okay. And a poor quality of food cooked in an improper manner and insufficient in quantity cannot make good blood. Flesh meats and rich food and an impoverished diet will produce the same results. Wow. But they told me I needed iron from the meat. You don't need iron from meat. That's heme iron. That's poisonous iron. That's bad iron. You don't want heme iron. You want iron from like lentils and from soy and things like that. Okay. So meat's not helpful. And disease of all kinds is increased by eating meat because most of the time those animals are diseased. Those who subsist largely upon flesh cannot avoid eating the meat of animals which are to a greater or lesser degree diseased. Obviously, as I said earlier, obviously you do not do a health check on the animal before you eat him. You don't get a death certificate on him before you eat him. You don't do a scan of any kind on him. The fluids and flesh of these diseased animals are received directly into the blood and pass into the circulation of the human body, becoming fluids and flesh are the same. Thus, humors are introduced into the system. If the person already has impure blood, it is greatly aggravated by the eating of flesh of these animals. The liability to take disease is increased tenfold by meat eating. Wow, you mean, wow, tenfold? Yeah. I'm just quoting here, tenfold. That's amazing. And people complain of disease, anemia, and it's all from eating. When was the last time your doctor that diagnosed you with anemia said, "Do you eat meat? Stop doing it"? No, they don't say that. Often they say the very opposite. Eating sick animals produces sick blood. It sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Those who subsist largely upon meat cannot avoid sometimes eating the flesh, which is more or less diseased. In many cases, the process of fitting animals for market produces an unhealthy condition. Shut away from the light and pure air. They need light and pure air too, you know. Inhaling the atmosphere of filthy stables. Filthy stables. Very filthy stables. The entire body soon becomes contaminated with foul matter. And when such flesh is received into the human body, it corrupts the blood and disease is produced. I have shown them that their meat diet, which was supposed to be essential, in whose estimation, people who don't know, was not necessary, and that as they were composed of what they ate, brain, bone, and muscle, were in an unwholesome condition. Because they live on the flesh of dead animals, that their blood was being corrupted by this improper diet, that the flesh which they ate was diseased, and their entire system was becoming gross and corrupted. Are there some meats that are worse than others? Well, Eating pork doesn't make good blood. The use of swine's flesh in your family has imparted a poor quality of blood. It is impossible for those who make free use of flesh meat to have an unclouded brain and an active intellect. That's amazing. It's like arguing with a drunk. You shouldn't be drinking that alcohol. What did you say? You shouldn't be drinking that alcohol. Talk to somebody's eating flesh. You shouldn't be eating that flesh. What did you say? So people can't think when they eat this stuff. And it makes poor quality of blood. And they have poor quality of blood going to the brain. They have a poor brain. I mean, this is scary. You ever heard of Alzheimer's? Anybody here remember what Alzheimer's is? Well, at least Alzheimer's too. Butter, cheese, rich pastries cannot be converted into good blood. Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts. Nope, don't go there. Many a mother sets a table that is a snare to her family. Flesh meats, butter, cheese, rich pastries, spiced foods, and condiments are freely partaken of by both young and old and young. These things do their work in deranging the stomach, exciting the nerves, and enfeebling the intellect. The blood-making organs cannot convert such things into good blood. Okay, let's go over the list again. Butter, that's just a grease stick. Cheese, that's rotten milk. Rich pastries, that's your grainitarians that have had all the nutrients removed and it's just the white part of the flour. The blood becomes fevered. That's not good. The animal propensities are aroused. Uh-oh. The beast. While the moral and intellectual powers are weakened and become servants to the baser passions. Sounds like the prescription for a sex offender to me. Okay, let's go on. Get a health assessment on the cows and chickens you obtain your milk and eggs from. I'm telling you, I'm going to become very popular here as you walk into the restaurant and with your clipboard and pencil and your microscope, you start asking for a health assessment. Those who live in new countries or in poverty-stricken districts where fruits and nuts are scarce should not be urged to exclude milk and eggs from their dietary, but in the case of persons whose blood-making organs are feeble, especially if other foods to supply the needed element cannot be obtained, milk and eggs should not be wholly discarded. Great care should be taken, however, to obtain milk from healthy cows. Okay, what's a healthy cow? You know, I used to milk a cow. Came in one morning and the cow wasn't there. Where's the cow? I got to milk the cow. Dad, what did he die of? We don't know. We're going to find out. The healthy cow died overnight. What did they die of? Leukemia viruses. Oh, no. All right. Care should be taken, however, to obtain milk from healthy cows. Most of the time, people don't know if their cow's healthy or not. And like I said, this cow wasn't my personal cow. It was the cow that the academy I went to owned. But the cow up and died, and nobody knew it was going to die. All right. Great care should be taken, however, to obtain milk from healthy cows and eggs from healthy fowls. How do you check the health of a chicken? You've got to get good at checking the chicken's health. If you're going to eat eggs from it, okay, so how do you check the health of a chicken? Better learn that are well fed and well cared for, and the eggs should be so cooked as to be most easily digested. All right. The diet reform should be progressive. As disease in animals increases, the use of milk and eggs will become more and more unsafe. An effort should be made to supply their place with other things that are healthful and inexpensive. The people everywhere should be taught how to cook without milk and eggs so far as possible, and yet have their food wholesome and palatable. We live in a day and age when people are getting more and more wicked. You think the milk and eggs are getting better? Now, there's things you can do that are beneficial for your whole body. The pleasure of doing good to others. This is an amazing thing for your blood. The pleasure of doing good to others imparts a glow to the feelings which flashes through the nerves and quickens the circulation of blood and induces mental and physical health. Can you read that again? The pleasure of doing good to others imparts a glow to the feelings which flashes through the nerves, quickens the circulation of blood. and induces mental and physical health. And so when you help others, you yourself are helped. That's a big benefit. And I just want to take a few slides here just to touch on some of the top anemic things from science, like iron deficiency or iodine deficiency or B12 deficiency or certain phytonutrient deficiencies. And so if you want to get good iron, soybeans, sesames, lentils, oats, olives, spinach, peas, those are top of the list. Talking about phytonutrients, vitamin C is very important for good blood. Oranges, kiwi, red cabbage, peppers, top the list. Iodine, some people can't absorb their iron until they get sufficient iodine. There's seaweed, there's kelp granules, there's a Lugol solution. Some people have megaloblastic anemia. They have big cells that aren't right. Yeah, okay. Other problems, some people need B12. And so how do you get big B12? Well, grow your own vegetables and don't overwash them, and eat them fresh, and you get lots of B12. Also reduces the inflammation in your body so you can absorb it better. What else will make your blood go bad? We discourage the use of drugs. That's a blanket statement, all pharmaceuticals. We discourage the use of drugs, for they poison the current of the blood. In these institutions, sensible instructions should be given on how to eat, how to drink, how to dress, how to live, so that the health may be preserved. Might we say the health of the blood? But I want a quick fix. Can't I have a quick fix? I just want a pill to fix it. I don't want to have to do all the things you said in this lecture. I might have poor blood because I'm violating all these rules, but I just want a pill. A practice that is laying the foundation for a vast amount of disease and of even more serious ills is the free use of poisonous drugs. How do you know if a drug is poisonous or not? If it had to have a prescription, it is poisonous. When attacked by disease, many will not take the trouble to search out the cause of their illness. Their chief anxiety is to rid themselves of pain and inconvenience. So they resort to patent nostrums. What's a patent nostrum? Nutraceuticals, supplements, vitamin pills, of whose real properties they know little, or they often apply to the physician for some remedy to counteract the results of their misdoing, but with no thought of making a change in their unhealthful habits. And so we're talking about things that cause disease. And so you end up with anemia. In summary, anemia, yep, you want to make sure you have good blood because the life is in the blood. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. That's your life. That's your blood. Perfect health depends on perfect circulation. So you need to have good circulation. Good blood is the result of good adherence to physical laws God has ordained in our being. Pure air, sunlight, abstinence, rest, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine power. These are the true remedies. For I have no pleasure in the death of him that dieth, saith the Lord. Wherefore, turn yourselves and live ye. Follow good health habits, and you will have good blood. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Clark. Truly, again, phenomenal. The statistics that I was pulling up from the Bureau of Health, Public Health in India shows that Indian women experience about 57% across the nation, of which can be a significant burden impacting the community by anemia.
Wow.
That's 25% in men, 57% of women between the ages of 15 to 49. But yeah, there are some things that you mentioned. I think there would be something that we can take heart to the fact that we can be able to eat unleavened bread and lentils. That's something that was pretty interesting because in India you eat a lot of chapatis, okay, flatbread, as unleavened bread and to be able to do plenty of lentils. Uh, just a quick question. This is something that I wanted to be able to know with regard to healthfully prepared. What does that mean? If you can, I know you started to discuss a little bit about what is healthfully prepared. Just for the sake of all of our people who cook a lot of the food, and I think we overcook a lot of our food with fruits and with vegetables, especially. Would you be able to give us a little bit more explanation with regard to use of oils and the definition of condiments and spices for the Indian population, Dr. Clark?
Yes, indeed. And thank you for bringing that up. And, one of the things we're told is that food prepared in as healthful a manner as possible, free from grease, condiments, and spices. And so grease is a big part of poor blood, poor health, poor circulation, because the grease thickens the blood. It makes it so blood's oxygen carrying capacity drops by about 35%. It makes it so that the inflammation in the body increases. As the inflammation increases, the blood vessels get inflamed and thickened. It makes it hard for the oxygen to make it from the blood vessels into the tissues, all because of the excess oils. I'm thinking I should do a whole talk just on oils, because the way they process most materials, raw materials, to extract the oil is causing the oils to become poisonous. It produces in them chemicals that are toxic to the system. It produces in it, for example, acrylamide, which is toxic to your system. It produces peroxidized lipids, or makes your fats into free radicals. And this is especially caused when you take the oils and you fry with them. When you put them in a pan and you heat them up, the temperature goes up in the 400 range or whatever, and you oxidize the oils, you make them into a very dangerous substance, which is interesting to me. I don't eat fried food, but if somehow I get into fried food accidentally, like at a potluck, I can smell it on my urine the next time I pee. I can smell the fried smell. It's like, wow, okay, I just got, dosed with fried stuff. And this goes through your whole body, affects your kidneys, affects your blood. And so frying grease. Now, grease is technically would be saturated fats. And so saturated fats would be anywhere from animal fats, lard, which would be pig fat, but cow fat, which would be tallow type shortening, but also the trans fat, or the hydrogenated vegetable oils like Crisco. Those would be part of that, and your coconut oils, which are just vegetable lard in essence. And all these things definitely decrease the blood's oxygen carrying capacity. When you decrease the oxygen carrying capacity, you also decrease the ability of the blood to carry out toxins out of the body, such as acids, arachidonic acid, lactic acid, those kind of acids. And with the accumulation of acids, those make the blood toxic, as well as the uric acid. So you end up with high uric acids. High uric acids give you high blood pressure. High uric acids give you gout. High uric acids affect your liver. And so all from, the fact that you're using these oils. And we love our oils. I just did a talk today at church about gaining weight. People love the taste of oil, and so it makes fast food restaurants sell more food. But the oils are not going to make you healthy. They make you gain weight. When you gain weight, well, then you have more places the blood has to pump. When the blood has to pump more places, you end up with high blood pressure. All kinds of things happen just from the extra fats. And how about the condiments? Most of the time, the goal of the condiment people is to make you eat more food. And it's better to learn to appreciate simply prepared foods. Your flatbreads and your lentils, that's great. But if you start adding lots of condiments to that, I don't know what condiments are popular in India, but over here it's your barbecue sauce and your steak sauce and your anchovy sauce, otherwise, or Worcestershire sauce, I guess they call it. your ketchup and your mayonnaise and your dressings and your mustard, and they're all just loaded with spices and usually MSG. You have to have some MSG in there. And the condiments inflame the blood. When the blood gets inflamed, you increase, as I understand it, the turnover of red blood cells. In other words, your body destroys them sooner than they should be destroyed. They should last about 2 months. They end up getting destroyed earlier, and your bilirubin can increase. So it's all from just inflaming the blood. And then, so, of course, we read several quotes that talk about fevering the blood or inflaming the blood, and so that's part of the issue. And so then there's different spices. I mean, some spices are good, such as your turmeric, which is very popular there in India, ginger. But some spices are more dangerous, like nutmeg, and one that's sort of a double-edged sword is your peppers, especially your very hot peppers. And it is true we use some of them in certain medical missionary applications. I'll tell you, for a bleeding wound, like you cut your finger in the kitchen trying to prepare your vegetables, nothing works better than a little cayenne pepper on there to stop the bleeding and start the healing and to actually reduce pain. But taken in your stomach as a food, cayenne pepper raises the stomach acid by like 700%. And when it raises the acid in the stomach, it creates too much acid. You get microbleeding. You start getting inflammation. The inflammation goes to the blood and spreads to the whole body. You increase your likelihood of an autoimmune disease, an inflammatory disease, and most people with autoimmune disease and inflammatory diseases have anemia. And so that's not helpful. Black pepper increases the stomach acidity by 400%, not quite as much as cayenne, but still is a problem. And it creates leaky gut syndrome. Thus, people unknowingly believe that, well, if I take black pepper with my turmeric, it'll absorb better. Yeah, because you just punched holes in your guts for it to come pouring through. But that's not the way you want to increase the absorption of turmeric by creating leaky gut syndrome. You want to just better things to mix with your turmeric would be honey or other bee products, propolis or pollen or so forth. That tends to help it with its absorption without the dangers of black pepper. So black pepper is a big one. I don't know. Certain other seasonings used in India we like and are healthy and used medicinally, like fenugreek. Those are nice. What do you call it? What are the fiery spice things that Julie, what's the fiery spice thing that comes as a mixture of fiery spices they use with a lot of Indian food? Curry. The curry would be very suspicious for all its very fiery ingredients. And anytime you have fiery ingredients and it tends to make your temperature of your body go up, you're probably increasing inflammation and you're probably going to end up with poor health over it. That's just my intuition on that one.
Well, thank you, Dr. Clark. We had a question that came in with regard to the problem with boxed cereals. They would like to be able to have you explain a little bit about the problem with eating straight out of the box there.
All right. Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one. One day I was at somebody's house when we were on the road going from state to state doing lectures, and they somehow they were feeding us, and they had some boxes of cereals. And I thought, I don't want boxed cereal, but I thought, okay, I'm going to open one of these. And so I grabbed it by, how you grab a box cereal bag on both sides, right where the seam the seam is sort of in the middle, and you open it. Well, I opened and I stuck my nose in it. Man, I about passed out. I got a load of smell of chemicals that about did me in. But all right, but that's not the big thing on them. There was a study done. Well, many studies. I'll just cite one. I came across this when I was studying high blood pressure, and the researchers were complaining that they couldn't keep rats alive to finish the study to prove anything about high blood pressure. But there was a guy who in their studies they decided to put rats in three groups. One, two, three. The first group of rats got to eat rat chow. That was great. They lived quite a long time, like 18 months or something like that. The second group of rats got fed the water, the vitamin water that they spray on to like cornflakes or Special K or whatever. They got the vitamin water. That's all they got. They lived about 6 weeks and then they died. The third group of rats got to eat the cereal. They lived about 3 weeks before they died. So, and assumably rats are supposed to eat the type of things that cereals are made of, you know, grains and so forth. So that was a pretty dramatic thing. That was quite a study. So there's been more than one study on this, like I say, and so the box cereals, and you might think, well, I'll just get the, you know, organic, the ones that are touted to be good. Well, I'm sure there's a difference between, yeah, eating Fruit Loops and eating, you know, Nature's Path, you know, Mesa, whole organic, whatever cereal. But they still, what happens when they make it is they cook it forever. By forever, I mean I had a patient who came into me and I'm supposed to figure out what's wrong with them. And they brought a video. Here's my job. Here's what I do. And I said, okay, I'll take the video home and watch it. I watched it. Here he was taking like 60-pound sacks of cornmeal, pouring it into cookers that were, you know, the size, well, the size of a bathtub, and turning on the heat, and they would boil this stuff for 28 to 29 hours. I mean, what happens when you cook your broccoli too long? And as they cook it like this, the nutrient value goes down. I mean, you talk about losing vitamin C over cooking your red cabbage for, you know, 10, 20, 30 minutes. Well, here they're cooking this stuff overnight. And yeah, and it turns the starch into sugars. And any volatile vitamins are going to float off. And so then they spray it out into these flakes, you know, corn flakes or Wheaties or Special K or whatever. And then it sits in a package with no protection from oxidization. There's no, you know, you get a flax seed, it's got a nice, you know, brown coating on it so it doesn't get oxidized. You make this cereal and put it in a package full of air, and you're going to end up, well, I say air. I just told you I breathed it and about passed out. Maybe they put gas in there. Anyway, it's in the, probably air in there, and it's going to oxidize. And the oils that they used in it, or just the oils naturally occurring in the product, are going to go rancid, go oxidized. And so all these things make it so it's not a great food. Best thing you can do is buy whole grains, and when you're ready for them to be cooked into like your morning cereal, you run them through your own grinder. I used to do this. I used to have, oh, I mean, I have a grinder, but you run them through a grinder, and either like you can make your own steel cut oats easily. I just open the grinder up so it's very coarse, and to make your own. There's a reason why in the Old Testament you weren't supposed to take as a security for a loan somebody's millstones. They need to use their millstones every day to have nice fresh ground flour and nice fresh ground things. But these, who knows when that box cereal was made? Could have been 20 years ago for all we know. You know, that's hard to say. And so box cereals are not your first choice for ideal food. Most of them are loaded with sugar these days too. It's hard to find any without sugar.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Clark. And I think you mentioned about grinding it fresh. You know, this was back in the day in India as well, that we would be able to grind our wheat flour that we would need for each family's need, you know, once every couple of days, because we'd go to the local mill and we'd take our wheat there and then get it ground up to make our flatbread. There was a question with regard to the braziers that women wear and whether we ought to be able to reconsider.
Yes, definitely. I guess there was this slogan went around back a few years ago, burn the bra. Well, there's a book out there. Do you have your book here handy, Julie? We'll just grab the book here and show you. Oh yeah, right here. All right, here's the book. I guess it comes up backwards in my screen here, but Dress to Kill, second edition, the link between breast cancer and the bra, a look at a breathtaking breast cancer theory and the remarkable evidence to support it. Sydney Ross Singer, and can't say that person's name. But anyway, documents good research and see what happens when you wear the bra. The study that I cited in, or that was a part of what I just talked about in this topic, was that it decreases the amount of air you breathe with every breath. Now, that's sort of a problem for the lungs. But it also decreases lymph drainage from the breast, so you get a congestion. It changes the blood flow in the breast. The breast run at a higher temperature all the time. All these things contribute to breast disease. And then with a poor diet that most people have, then you have a higher incidence of breast cancer. And so those were the things that I was thinking about there for the bra. So what should you do instead? Well, what is the purpose of the bra? It's all about looks. So when I was in residency, at least an internship, I did a couple of rotations. I was assigned a couple of rotations. It wasn't my choice to do plastic surgery. And, you know, those guys are up to an interesting business. But one of the research articles that we end up looking at was the impact of where the breasts end up positioned on the chest and how that reflects in the social or sexual attractiveness, social prowess, what the report is of colleagues. For example, one guy went around and got like 30,000 women that were selected by their colleagues as being most attractive in their breasts, to drop their tops and take measurements. And he figured out exact measurements, and these are type measurements that to women over time will not be able to maintain and achieve if they don't wear clothing that will hold their breasts up in this sexual appealing position their whole lives. So it really has to do with why our society is bent on sex. They have this whole what we say, Hollywood is all about it. Most advertising, they want you to lust after the cornflakes and after the beer and lust after, and it's all and so the purpose of the bra is not for health. I guess that's the bottom line.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Clark. I was just doing some reading this week, and we received a notification from CDC with the public health department here in Kern County saying about how there was a case of the highly pathogenic avian influenza A, which is H5N1 virus infection reported in a person in the United States. And supposedly, this was to be able to tell people to stay away from dairy and also be able to stay away from birds. Interestingly enough, the person who had this and the documentation showed that this person worked for a dairy farm as well. Anyways, this is just something to be able to add to what it is that you were talking about, that we have come to the time where it's no longer safe for us to be able to consider milk and eggs as part of our diet. There was a question with regard to a person's child who had anemia growing up, and the question that we asked essentially was with regard to feeding dairy to the child. And we found out that this person did indeed have milk as part of their diet, and the doctors just suggested trying to be able to allow them to weather it out. But what would you tell a mother like that who has maybe a 5 or 6 year old who's diagnosed anemic, and they want to be able to do the right thing and they want to change their diet?
Absolutely. There's no question. Dairy consumption in childhood has been linked to anemia. And so switch to something else. It's only human beings that think they need another animal's baby food their whole life. And we really don't need the baby food. I mean, the cow itself doesn't nurse the cow all that long. I mean, commercially, at least over here, 3 or 4 months is all the longer they get to nurse, and they gain a lot of weight pretty fast. That milk from that big animal isn't really suitable for humans as far as compared to human milk. And so you're much better off finding other things to feed your child. And hopefully you got some insights from this lecture on alternatives. But we really don't need a liquid diet. We really don't need milks our whole life. Better to chew your food, chew it well. And that would be what would be, and I mentioned that in one slide there, liquid food. So milk would be another one of those liquid foods. That would be good to discard. That's sort of, technically, you certainly drink milk as liquid. Technically, though, it does collabor in your stomach, turn to gel, but it still is definitely a cause of anemia. And so you'd be better off finding food that you chew well as well. So,
yeah, thank you, Dr. Clark. I know that milk has been considered to be the liquid meat, and they have issues of that nature. But those are the questions that I have that came through. But if at all anybody else has a question, maybe they can be able to refer to your website and be able to check and see that you have tons of material on your handouts and your presentation, flyers and everything else that you have on site. Just so that our people know, our next meeting will be on May the 4th, where Dr. Clark will come back to be able to discuss the judgment and mental health. We're talking about hell, condemnation, punishment, the judgments that most people fear. But thank you again, Dr. Clark, for a phenomenal presentation. I'd love you to be able to give your closing comments and close this out with a word of prayer, sir.
yes, thank you. This has been a very interesting research project for me. And I probably should expand it with a few interesting medical studies just to add into it, just with charts and so forth. But I don't think we'd be adding much to it as far as content or advice. But a lot of people don't realize how much what they do impacts their health. And in this case, we're talking blood. So I hope people gain something from this that will help them, and that they'll realize that a lot of modern practices contribute to anemia. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Dear Father in heaven, it's been good to talk about blood, and you sent your Son here to spill his blood for us, that we might have life, that we might have it more abundantly. And we need to learn how to cooperate with him so we can understand how to have physical life as well. And we've talked a lot about that today, natural health from following good natural law. Lord, we pray that people will be able to review this material and think about it and look at it as a blessing and apply the principles in a way that will give them good blood so they can have good health to the rest of their body, because perfect health depends on perfect circulation. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Dr. Clark, for being here. We want to be able to thank those of you who have decided to join us. When you get onto Dr. Clark's website is rev14.com. When you're there, drop Dr. Clark a note and possibly let him know how things are going. Your questions can be answered there, as well as maybe even give a little bit of contribution so that this ministry can continue to be able to work to bring a blessing to those around. But until we get an opportunity to meet again, may the Lord bless and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, and give you peace and an opportunity to have good blood. Thank you, and God